Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Jordan Garber NOW podcast. Now, we have a lot of interviews lined up for today, but we're going to kick it right off with some wrestling news, and none other. He's back again this week, none other than Philip Stamper. Philip, welcome back. How you doing, man?
I'm well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really good. You know, last show was a really big success. If no one's listened to our 3 hour special, it was pretty incredible. It took me all week to do it, and doing that between two jobs was definitely quite the journey. But it's the longest episode I've ever done, and I want to thank you for being a contributor to that. But
Ab- Absolutely. And you got a little bit of nice coverage yourself out of that.
no, absolutely. You know, to have someone like Corey Forrester on the show, that was awesome to get that publicity. And not just guys like that, but like to have like a solid five wrestler card, including yourself. It was jam packed. We had the Cloud9 Wrestling Heavyweight Champion, which, if you guys haven't heard, it's a promotion down there in North Dakota, which is really, really strong. It's the strongest one out there, one of the top in the Midwest right now. We had yourself. We had Kevin O'Doyle, who's almost on top of the CWE food chain here in Winnipeg and across Canada. And who else did we have? We had another two guests, Corey Forrester, and then there's someone else. I kind of hate to mention out people, but no, it was the Canadian Goose, who is a standout in Alberta. So we pretty much covered, like literally all four corners of North America. We covered the West, and we covered the East, and we covered the central part. So it was really awesome. Anyways, just before we talk about WWE news, the big question is coronavirus affecting the indie product. You know, there's a lot of indie shows that are working shows with crowds, and there's a lot of
hmm
indie shows that are working shows without crowds and making it a pay-per-view or something like that, kind of making it a benefit for people to watch. Now, man, this coronavirus has changed the entire era in professional wrestling. It's a new era in itself. Has this impacted the independent wrestling product long term, for the better or the worse? And that sounds like a stupid question, but there are pros and cons to this situation, which includes a bigger television audience due to people being bored at home. So, what's your viewpoint on that?
It is a big ball of mix right now. It is certainly for sure it's impacted all the lives. And for events, for the most part, there's restrictions on size. Some of states can't even have events yet. And even I actually have an article for us to talk about a little bit later about what Pennsylvania is doing, because that may have a far further reaching issue with regarding states. And other states have no restrictions. So there are certain events that are running the way they did pre-pandemic, and even not even with masks being required by their local jurisdictions. So it's interesting to see how different areas are doing different things, and then correspondingly what those rates are like in different areas of the country. Um, and I say country because I pay attention a little bit more to things that are happening in the United States. But certainly, this is a worldwide pandemic. That's why it's a pandemic. Um, and it's going to have long-lasting impacts. There are some companies that are completely not running at all. They don't want to risk public safety. They don't want to risk their talents' health and safety. And in some cases, they can't because their states won't allow it. So there's really some frustration on the behalf of some promoters. One promoter just spoke to me tonight regarding the Commonwealth of Virginia, and their frustration with the Commonwealth has really actually led them to the decision that they don't think they're going to run anymore, even when the pandemic comes back. For some people, financially, they're not going to be able to, because whether it's because of the lack of events or how it's impacted their financial security overall, they're not going to have the financial capital to run when they move forward with events. So it really is going to depend on the place, almost by just location. Some people are going to more luck out than others just by that simple location. And then we're only talking about what's happening now, not what happens when restrictions ease up further because people, quote, get tired of them, and there are higher hospitalization rates and higher death rates again. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not going to say we're going to see tomorrow these huge spike in numbers, and it certainly isn't all wrestling's fault, but just how us as human beings and our behavior manifest themselves, they're going to get so frustrated with, like, well, I don't want to why do I have to keep wearing a mask? I'm getting really frustrated with wearing a mask in public. Like, I just want to walk down the street. I'm not going to do that. Hey, this is getting a little bit ridiculous. I have to monitor how I go to the store and how often. Maybe I'm going to do some more things a little bit more freely. Hey, I want to go to the movies. Hey, I want to do these other things. Well, that's sort of what impedes then the growth, or not impedes, but actually gives fuel to the growth of the contagion of a virus that, yes, many people will be asymptomatic for. But I just saw a video based off of CDC data where there's sort of this actuarial curve of the average amount of deaths that occurred during the course of a year at different points of a year, and not giving a reason why. This is not I'm not even going to say like due to COVID, but just when you look at that curve for 2020, just in the United States, there's 193,000 deaths unaccounted for, and this is based off data about 2 weeks old now. So it's like, well, if there's that sudden rise in what's quote unexpected deaths, and comparatively year over year, we weren't seeing that. It is fresh for 2020. Well, that's saying indicatively there's something different in this year with the pandemic. So it isn't just a political machination. It actually does exist as a real threat for people's lives. I think how we recover is going to depend on how quickly we move forward with a vaccine, some longer-term safer health practices. I'm hopeful that people are more cognizant of good hygiene and how they clean their work areas, because I think moving forward past that, we're in our society are going to have to think about that. And in wrestling, we really have to think about that because there's not really physical distancing between wrestlers.
No,
And so,
absolutely.
right. So how do you clean your rings? How do you keep your locker room clean? How do you socialize, and how do you meet and greet with fans or sell merchandise in a safe manner that now people are going to feel comfortable with? The curve of which the fan base are going to feel comfortable with returning into a large crowd situation in close quarters again. That's going to be a part of it too. So it's going to be a big effort that's going to take some time to restore some semblance of what it was like before.
Now, we talk about it on an independent stand of things, but let's talk about it on a major league scale. How's the coronavirus affecting that? Because now the NXT has been affected with that, and it believed to be from a performance center coach. No names or anything, but like that on a major scale. Talking about now, how is that affecting things, and how many cons can that be? And is there any way they can turn those cons into a positive on a grander scale of things?
Well, so what? Again, exactly like I said, human behavior is going to start dictating. Oh, I'm going to relax my own stance, and I want to have the ability to socialize more without having to wear a mask. And I mean, that's real life. That just showed that at apparently out of the performance center. And so, they probably will revert back for in training purposes. No, you have to wear masks. No, we have to physically distant. I don't know how, when it comes to the PC, and the frequency of a person A comes in every single day, or person B comes in just Mondays and Thursdays. I don't know how their schedule is per se. Do they rotate staff? I don't know what their cleaning mechanisms are. How were they wearing masks? Were they wearing masks during training? So there's I don't know enough about the mechanisms they actually have in place for good safety protocols, but I look at other places that I know are running training, certainly not as large as the WWE, but how they're separating days, how people will have masks on, even if they're wrestling. Like, there's talk about how we have good hygiene, how we don't share the locker room space in the same way we used to before. So behind the scenes, they're going to have to modify that. And now, I say fortunately in a relative term. Fortunately, they have moved their filming to the Amway Center in Orlando. So filming won't be impeded by what's happened at the Performance Center, other than the talent that has been directly impacted. I don't know how frequent the WWE is testing, if they're testing literally everybody once a week, if they're doing randomized sampling testing. So, I don't know how they necessarily caught that it could have been narrowed down to this Performance Center coach. So, who knows how that got figured out. but moving forward, okay, how do we keep maintaining the same safety mechanisms and protocols and keep them in place? And if they are testing once a week, which may be all they need to do, so that way when you go into the filming area, like, okay, we're testing you this week, and then though you can be asymptomatic for up to 2 weeks, most people are showing symptoms within 72 hours if they're going to develop symptoms. So therefore, some people will indicate like, okay, wait a minute, I'm not feeling that good. And if they're also getting tested at the same time by the WWE, both ways will be able to manifest themselves in, okay, wait a minute, we have some more positive tests. So it's going to change some creative things in the moment. But long term, I think the WWE is actually going to turn out a little bit better. Now, financially, the WWE is made in the shade right now. I mean, they are the #1 wrestling promotion in the world. They have a tremendous financial operation. They're one of the top 250 companies in the United States with actual cash reserves. And they're making more money. I think they said something like they made more money this quarter because they weren't having expenditures for what it takes to go on the road and having to coordinate arena rentals and all the things they do with that.